Welcome to Hispanic Biz Success Stories. I'm Homero Galicia. Every business has a story. We trust that these stories share insight about our community and about business. As our guest today shares his story with you, we trust that you find this insightful and entertaining. Our special guest with us today is Mr. Joel Diaz, President of Miratek Corporation. Joe, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Homero.
Appreciate your story.
Thanks.
Tell me, what is Miratek?
Miratek is a company started about 22 years ago. And what we do basically, we're a solutions provider for customers. And probably about 70% of our business is federal customers around the country, ranging from Department of Defense, Department of Energy, Department of Homeland Security, HUD here locally with HACCP, a lot of commercial business as well.
You know, when you say solutions provider, what does that mean?
Basically, what we do is we provide technical solutions for customers. And three main areas that we focus on. It's information technology, which is a pretty diverse area, anywhere from information security, information assurance, to your basic help desk, network support, systems administration. Now, with all the federal work, the big thing now is cyber. So that's an area we're trying to focus on, is cyber. The other area of the company is environmental services. We do a lot, and I call that kind of the marriage between IT. We started doing GIS, Geographical Information Systems, which is a marriage between IT and engineering. And we do that at Fort Bliss for White Sands Missile Range. We did some stuff for Manitoba Hydro up in Canada. We currently have a project with Southern California Edison in Rancho Cucamonga, California, doing a lot of GIS. But that led to another area for a company, which is environmental. And it's three main areas. It's cultural resources, archaeologists, historical architecture, natural resources, which is a lot of the wildlife, habitat, doing biological assessments. At Fort Bliss, we've got about 1.1 million acres of range out there. It's all protected federal land. For example, with the two new ranges that were built out here, the government has to track potential damage to wildlife out in the desert. So what we do is a lot of natural resources studies. We've done raptor transformer studies, which another area, the third area in environmental is your basic environmental compliance. That's, water, stormwater, air compliance, pollution prevention. We run the hazardous waste facility at Fort Bliss. Over the years, we also have a team running the recycling center. And those two groups have done some great things for Fort Bliss, generated millions of dollars in cost savings. So that's kind of high level on the federal and the company. And
you're an engineer?
I'm an engineer, yes, sir.
What kind of an engineer?
I'm a mechanical engineer.
Okay.
University of Texas.
Fantastic. Let me ask you about your background, and we'll get back into the business. But you're from El Paso?
Yes, sir. Born and raised.
In what neighborhood were you raised in?
One of the best neighborhoods in El Paso.
That's good.
No, basically, I grew up in the south side of El Paso. At the time, it was sort of central, right? You recall the Paisano. I actually grew up in the Paisano housing projects.
Okay.
And then from there, we moved over to the Sherman housing
Okay.
What's funny is all these years later, we do the IT support for HACCP, which runs 44 facilities around the city, including Sherman. And as you know, Paisano was demolished many years ago.
Yeah.
But there is a facility out there for retired.
Oh, okay.
Next to the Coliseum.
HACCP is the local housing authority, right?
The housing authority for the city of El Paso.
Mm-hmm. And you've been doing projects with them for many years?
We've been with HACCP since probably it's our 13th year.
Wow.
In our business, we compete for everything. So, every 5 years we get into a competitive contract. And right now what we do, we have an IT enterprise contract. What we do for HACCP is basically we run all their information technology. We report to the CIO, Mr. Cantu, and we basically do all the systems administration, help desk, configuration management, change management. With a big RAD initiative that they're doing right now, rental assistance development, we developed a lot of custom software to help HACCP prepare for the RAD initiative, like the vacancy management system, the residency control system. And then right now we're in the process of supporting their MAPS technology. So we've done a little bit of everything on the IT side for HASIP over the years.
Wow. So you know them pretty intimately.
Yes, we're basically the way we look at it with customers like HASIP is we're more than just a vendor or a contractor. We're a strategic partner to the agency.
And you grew up in the housing authority, so you know them. You're a success story, maybe.
Yeah, in a way. One time I actually had I gave a presentation to Mr. Cichon had an initiative where he would bring in vendors or people that did great things around the city to present to all his managers. Wow. But yeah, basically the Sherman projects where I learned, I cut my teeth there, learning a lot. But I had a great time. That's what's unusual, growing up in a pretty impoverished area at the time. But it was just, I had a fun time growing up in that area.
Good. How large your family?
I've got 4 sisters, 1 brother, and my mother. Father passed away.
Okay. So you raised by your mom?
She pretty much raised us on her own. She was divorced at a younger age and raised us there in the Sherman.
And she worked her way?
She worked the whole time. I mean, that's basically, I think, where I get my work ethic. It's her, just her ability to, you meet a lot of people now that say single mothers, which is tough with 1 kid. I don't know how she did it with 6.
Wow. And where did she work?
She worked for Billy the Kid. When manufacturing was really big here. That was a tough work because I worked there a couple of summers and I got to see how.
Really?
Yeah, the work they did was tough.
Wow.
Great lady. Great lady. She's still.
Well, in your family, your brothers and sisters, you have 1 brother and 4 sisters?
1 brother, 4 sisters. Yeah.
And how many of those are in business too?
Well, I know my sister Yolanda, probably you're familiar with Mirador Enterprises.
Yeah.
She's got a very successful facilities management construction company here in El Paso. I'm the second oldest. She's the third oldest. And then the oldest sister, Lori, is a principal with the Socorro Independent School District.
Okay.
The youngest, Veronica's a nurse. Then Pete works construction, and Rosie works for Texas Tech.
Okay. Wow.
So we all came, everybody came, considering in the neighborhood that I grew up, where probably 60, 70% of my friends are either at La Tuna, Huntsville, or they're gone, many years. Yeah. We came out all right. But I think when you have a great parent like that, I think
and that's what you attribute that to?
Oh, 100%.
Why?
Well, and also sport. In my case, sports, even though if you look at that area around the Sherman projects, I always tell people we have 3 softball fields. A lot of the city leagues that played, we had 3 softball fields, and the walking distance was the Delta Recreation Center. Yeah. And up the alley, straight up, was the Delta Boys Club. So between, that's pretty much where it kind of helped me stay off the streets, playing a lot of basketball, football.
You still?
Anything with the ball came natural. That's all we did as kids,
You're still active with sports?
Yeah, I still try to stay active.
Because I know you've worked out for years.
Yeah, just keeps your energy up. Yeah. In this business, we write a lot of proposals and a lot of late nights, so I think staying active helps.
What high school?
Jefferson High School.
How was that?
It was a good school, Jefferson Silver Foxes. It was right across the street from Sherman there. I think there's where the counselor, Mr. Johnston, was the one that saw, I think he saw the ability I had in math, and he encouraged me to take college-bound courses. Okay. And that's when I decided, well, he basically convinced me to attend UT Austin. I applied my freshman year. I basically survived on grant money. I didn't have a full scholarship and loans like any student, but I found out that it was pretty tough going to a school like UT and just making it with grant money. So I had a roommate at the time, Mike Arispe, pharmacy major. Engineering, out of let's say 1,000 students start in engineering, probably by the time you're a junior, senior, maybe 100 of them are left. Wow. There's a lot of weeder courses. Yeah. Calculus and differential equations and statics and dynamics. But with Mike, one thing I learned, this guy would stay up to 3 in the morning studying every night. And you know, when you go to UT Austin, the level of competition went from Jefferson High School to all of a sudden you were competing in classes against kids from Highland Park Village and Katy, National Merit Scholars, which I think they were naturally probably smarter and been exposed to a lot more, but the study and the focus with Mike, I think that's what got me. I was just very focused, and I ended up with a 3.9 my freshman year.
Wow.
And I applied for some scholarship money, and actually Chevron gave me a ride. I got a full scholarship for 3 years.
Wow. Were you top 10 in high school?
Yes, I was top 10 in high school.
Okay.
But you know, growing up in the Sherman, I didn't act like one of the top 10.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the James Dean, wearing my Levi jacket and the T-shirt, you know. You were Mr. Cool from the Sherman. You know, so.
Well,
Yeah.
That must have been a shock going to UT Austin, a big school like that.
It was, you know, 48,000 students. I think, like I said, my roommate was the key. He was a junior pharmacy major, so he had been exposed to it. And I think that was the focus and just studying. Because I saw a lot of kids that were smarter, I thought, National Merit Scholars, but you can have a lot of fun at UT Austin also.
Yes.
You have to make a decision what path you were going to take.
So you made a decision early?
Early on, yeah.
Why? Was that in you, or?
Well, I think it was, in me, the drive from my mother, I think. It's wanting that survival. I think it was that survival mechanism.
Can you describe that drive?
Yeah, like you say, in classes, when you're taking on a calculus class, kids that were from much better high schools and still getting the grades, is just studying hard, working hard, 100% focus.
Yeah, but you're competitive.
I'm very competitive. That came from sports too.
Okay.
Yeah, I think sports. I always played sports young, and I think even in business today, everything we do, we compete on proposals. So, not playing on team sports anymore, but you're competing every time you're taking on, and we take on the whole country in some of these proposals.
Wow.
But the work ethic definitely comes from seeing my mother and the way she worked to raise 6 kids on her own. Working tough jobs. I don't know if you've ever been to Billy the Kid, but I was in the shipping department. She was in the area where they had the mannequins to iron the clothing in their 8 hours. Mm. That was tough. That was very tough. Yeah.
So you have a healthy respect for your mom, and your brothers and sisters. I mean, they all all strove to do something, right?
Definitely. Everybody's come out good. You know, you had to avoid there are a lot of obstacles there in the Sherman. If you know, life is a game of inches, so any little move you made could take you the wrong way.
Like what kinds of obstacles?
But I think I always kind of had the maturity, and as being the oldest, even though the oldest male in the family, I kind of took on the father role, I guess.
Okay.
And I think I was mature from a young age.
And what does that mean? What would you do to help out the family?
Well, I worked since I was about 12.
Okay.
You remember Washington Park?
Yes.
I used to run the small rides out there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had a job pretty much ever since then. I think I've worked every year since I was 12 years old.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. They had at one time they had the national youth programs with the high schools. Mm-hmm. We were working at Scott at the cleaning the park, but it was great. It was great for when you're in high school having a summer job.
And so you get to UT Austin. You finish in engineering. And were you active outside of schoolwork? Were you active on groups?
Yeah, UT, not. I mean, I was pretty much focused on school, but we had our intramural activities.
Okay. So your first job out of college?
First job out of college, well, I graduated when the oil and gas industry was booming. Even though I was a mechanical engineer, my last semester I spent taking trips everywhere with companies. I had a pretty decent GPA, so I interviewed with Arco, Chevron. What the oil companies were doing at that time was taking mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and they'd take you through an internship type program and make you a petroleum engineer. Yeah. So my first job out of college, well, I co-opted. From junior to senior, I co-op with IBM on Cottle Road in San Jose, California.
Really? I used to live on Cottle Road.
Really?
Yeah.
That was a beautiful area. That was a big learning experience, being 19, 20 years old, spending 9 months in San Jose. Yeah. I learned a lot, where you actually were seeing engineers in real.
Yeah. In fact, I had a project there on Cottle Road at the IBM plant.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you're Stanford, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. So what year did you graduate from college?
It's December of '81.
Okay.
December, a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but when I got out, I interviewed with, again, IBM, a lot of the big technology companies, but at the time oil and gas paid the most money, and I ended up working, even though I had the Chevron scholarship, I ended up taking a production job with Exxon in Corpus Christi. I was a reservoir engineer with Exxon.
Wow. Yeah. In fact, I had a son born at the hospital on Cottle Road in
Really?
Yeah, in 80 80
It was about 81.
83.
Well, I was there about 80.
Yeah, in 83. In
Yeah.
fact,
We used to walk from our apartment, and I remember, well, they finally put a gate, but we used to jump a fence and then just walk right into the Cottle Road plant.
really?
But we had a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment back then, which I thought was high dollar.
Yeah,
But 3 roommates.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I probably same apartments. I wouldn't doubt it. No, but so how long were you with IBM then?
Okay, it was just a 9-month co-op job.
Okay.
When I graduated from UT, I went to work for Exxon for a couple of years. And then during the boom, I was getting calls from headhunters like 1 year into my stay with Exxon. At the time, if you had a reservoir engineering experience and an MBA, you remember the show Dallas? You go to Dallas and be an energy lender. So I always had I had a vision for business, and I wanted to get an MBA. So after 2 years with Exxon, I said, I'll be an energy lender. I'll go back get my MBA. I was going to school at night at Corpus Christi State University, working on my MBA. But the Exxon job was tough. Basically, Exxon, you're a 21-year-old engineer, and they gave you 4 fields. I was responsible for Taft, Pete Island, East White Point, and I think it was Miratek. So I had mainly, it was deep gas fields. And then in Taft, I had wells that were producing like 99% water cut. They say, here's a field with wells that are 99% watered out. Your job is to turn production around. So the reservoir engineer, you'd work with the geologist, the surface engineer, the subsurface engineers, and then you'd put a plan together and present to management, and then go drill. You know what? Now you've seen what's going on now with the Austin Chalk, the Eagle Ford Shale, where they're doing the horizontal drilling. That was started back then.
Okay.
So anyway, when I was going to school, a well would come in at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd get a call that I had to go out to the field. So it was tough having continuity, and I decided to save enough money to where I went back to school. And I tried to go back to UT for their 66-hour program, but it was just too expensive. I ended up going to University of North Texas back. And again, I learned you couldn't live off of savings. So I had 3 part-time jobs while I was getting my MBA at UNT.
Wow. So you went full-time to get your MBA?
Yeah, in about a year. It took me about a year and a semester to get the MBA.
In any field in specific?
I've got an MBA with a minor in information technology and finance.
Okay.
So I think the combination of that and the engineering kind of gave me a little bit of business.
So you went to business school but you had an interest in owning a business.
Back then, yes.
So
the business aspect.
Because
really
usually business
me.
school is to work with corporations. You were working with a corporation, but you still had an idea of small business.
Back then, I always knew I kind of wanted to do something.
Where did that come from?
Again, I think it just comes back. The entrepreneurship was over there. I think Johnson, the counselor at Jefferson, had talked about that.
Really?
And I saw that, the science and math came natural, but my passion was for business.
Really? And so business school, did that build that up?
I think, well, what I found out later, the main thing, the business school, what I found out is all you do in MBA class is write a million case studies, right?
Yeah.
A lot of writing. And looking back now, that's what you do when you get in business. Just a lot of proposal writing. Everything you do involves communication.
So what year did you get your MBA?
It was 1985.
Okay.
I think August of '85.
Okay. And then what followed that?
Yeah, but what happened when I was going to be an energy lender. The oil industry crashed. That was like the crash we're seeing right now. It was happening back then. So petroleum engineers were walking the streets of Houston at the time. And I interviewed General Dynamics, a bunch of companies, but GD gave me a pretty good offer. At the time, it was Lockheed. You familiar with the Fort Worth plant?
Yes.
Carswell. Basically, at one time they had like 32,000 employees.
That's
But what they do out there, at the time it was General Dynamics, and what they do is they manufacture the F-16 and all the different versions of X-16, the Wild Weasel. I was a program manager
Really?
in the Advanced Design Group.
Wow.
I was there for 6 years.
Really? Wow.
So there is where I really learned the federal government business, writing big proposals. You see now Joint Strike Fighter. Remember the F-22 that used to fly out of Holloman?
Yeah.
Well, I was on the proposal team back in 1988,
Really?
writing the proposal that became F-22 many years later.
Wow.
Well, when we were competing.
So you know that aircraft.
Yeah, well, that's where
yes.
I learned that part of the business, the federal. Really learned, because with Exxon it was more on the commercial side, oil and
So
gas.
you're very technical.
That's where I developed a lot of technical knowledge, the GD.
So what happened then with General Dynamics? 6 years.
Well, I was there 6 years, and then I was courted. You remember the Super Collider project
Yes.
in Dallas?
Yeah, the atom smasher.
Yeah, we were going to build a 54-mile tunnel and accelerate protons and electrons at 20 TeV, 20 times the speed of light.
Wow.
And we're actually going to put 5-story linear accelerators underground. And we actually finished, I think it was about 24 miles that was dug. Huge project. I worked for EG&G. And the reason I left GD at the time, I was happy there, but it was like a 30% offer, increase in my salary.
Wow.
So I had to make the move. But I stayed in my same townhome there in Arlington. Instead of driving to Fort Worth, I drove down to Waxahachie.
Oh, wow. That's
And that was a very interesting program. So I learned the Department of Energy side of the business there. And it was an $8 billion project, but remember when Graham and Hutchinson came in, they were lobbying for deficit cutting. At the time, a bunch of new Democrats came in to office. And they said, well, you want to cut the deficit? We'll cut your Pork Barrel, Texas project. I mean, why do people want to spend $8 billion to understand the fundamental nature of matter? We did probably the strongest technical team ever assembled for a government project. We had a couple of Nobel Peace Prize winners, but we just did a bad job of marketing until it was too late. With the Super Collider, we were going to look at levitating trains, cancer research, a lot of applications for it. But by then, the wave had already caught with the politicians to not fund the program, so they decided to shut it down, and I was there. I was part of the shutdown team. When I started on the Super Collider, there were 3,000 employees. By the time I left, I think there was 40 of us.
Really? You were in that?
But what I started doing was writing the business plan. I met Dr. Leo Gamotes, and who's now a partner in the business,
Yeah.
and 4 other professors here at UTEP. I called them the Technical Advisory Group. And my focus, when I was getting my MBA, I worked for a German professor, Harry Rosenfeld. For his tenure, he was writing a lot of papers on free trade between Mexico and the U.S., open border, which became NAFTA in '94. I did all this grunt work, looking up data on GNP manufacturing. So I developed an interest in coming back to the border. With Leo, and they were already doing some business through, I forget the name of the group at UTEP. I think it's the Integrated Training Manufacturing that does a lot of work with maquiladoras. So I wrote the business plan. Basically, took me about 4 to 5 months to write the plan, presented it to Leo and the group, and then we spun off the company in June of '94.
Wow.
And I didn't move back down to El Paso till I kept working for the Collider until we started picking up some little contracts in March of '95.
So did you start your business while you were still with the Super Collider?
Well, I started writing the business plan.
Okay.
That was the business plan. I mean, I was still a full-time employee of EG&G. And that's really was the start of it.
Wow. And so you put this whole business plan together, and you have your technical team here in El Paso.
Yeah, and then I found out, well, I moved back.
Okay.
And then, initially we had about 25 maquiladora clients. We developed,
Okay.
at the time we had diskettes, This is '94, technology has moved a long way. We developed a software called Smart Law, where we had all the Mexican environmental compliance law in a little diskette.
Wow.
So if you ever saw the little book where they had all the Mexican environmental compliance law, it was a tiny little book that was impossible to read. So with this diskette, we used it as a mechanism to open relationships with several customers like Ford, Coclisa, we had Scientific Atlanta, Lear. And originally that was my plan. My business plan was focused on deploying environmental technologies along the U.S.-Mexico border and maquilas. Well, what I found out over the years is business plans change. You know, we were mainly in Juarez on a daily basis doing a lot of consulting, high-end environmental compliance consulting, some IT consulting for maquilas. But over the years, what really got us to take off was the federal business. That's where I had my background. The GD background really helped there. In understanding proposals, understanding DOD, Department of Energy, and with a collider. So we applied for 8A certification, I think it was back in about 95?
Yeah.
96?
Yeah.
We got approved, and it took us about 3.5 years to get our first 8A contract. Marketing Fort Bliss and White Sands, just used to walk around with my little brochure, marketing everywhere, you know, until we won our first contract at Bliss. And then from there, I learned that in this business, it's all about performance. Even though these days, cost has become a big issue. But, you know, you build the client relationships, you perform, and then you grow the work. And that's how we slowly started growing, mainly at Fort Bliss originally. We got some work at White Sands, and then we started spreading into, you know, Kirtland. Since then, we've done work all over the country.
Wow. I had met you, I guess, shortly after you had formed the business and been back in El Paso. And I wish I had you know, met you more and known more about, but I knew about you and Dr. Gamotz.
Remember Dr. Rene Lopez?
Yes.
Compa Industries. He was one of my main mentors in the early days. You know, he passed away in '96 in a car accident.
Yeah, I remember that. That's right.
But I learned a lot from him as far as the 8A and the federal business.
So how did he take you on to mentor you?
Well, we developed he gave us he had confidence in Miratek, even though we were a two-man shop, Leo and myself and a couple of administrative employees. He gave us a contract to develop a software called a STROBE. Well, we actually came up with the name, Systematic Technique for Reducing Observational Behavioral Error for Department of Energy. Anyway, you know what's interesting about that? We developed that software using mainly resources with programmers in Juarez.
Really?
We found out that there's a great talent in Juarez in the programming area, because you know it's really hard to find good programmers in El Paso because of the magnet of Austin, Dallas, and Houston, where they go. A lot of the kids here move on.
Wow. We're continuing our story with Mr. Diaz. He's been sharing with us the growth of Miratek. Mr. Diaz is an engineer with an MBA, came back to El Paso to start a business, Miratek. Now, what year was it you started the business?
On paper, June of '94. This is our 22nd year. We're heading, this June will be our 22nd year in business. So
let me ask you about the business right now, where it's at. Like, how many employees do you have?
Right now, it's kind of, the number of employees is hard to gauge, right? Because what the company has transformed over the years. At our peak, what I call the peak during nothing to do with my political inclination. It just happened to be during the Bush years. We were at war. And we were 8A. I think we got up to 220 employees at our peak. Wow. But that's true. If you talk to any federal contractor, the business was very big at the time. The pie was big. The pie has shrunk from the federal side. So we found ourselves as a company, we've been diversifying. We've been out of the 8A program since May of 2004. So if you're familiar with the 8A, you know a lot of companies if they depended on 8A, they graduate and then they disappear, they sell out. We were approached for buyouts a couple of times, but I decided to keep it going. But the way we've been able to maintain our growth was, you know, things have gotten more competitive as the pie shrunk. The lowest cost, technically acceptable type arena. We've created joint ventures strategically to compete. I mean, because sometimes we're taking on companies, Balway Bandits from back east, some big boys. So what we've done as a company is joint venturing has been a way that the company has continued our growth. While we've kept most of our customers, our sales revenue has come down mainly because we're usually the minority partner. When you're the minority partner in a joint venture, you don't The sales revenue goes through the majority partner, not through the minority partner. But our net income has still been strong. So if you count our joint ventures, Miratek, Miratek Core, we're probably, White Sands alone under our Adamir Wismer contract, we've got about 120, we average 120, 150 employees. So it's probably everything we manage is about 300.
Wow.
300 FTEs total.
Wow.
If you count all the JVs.
So your business is your life.
Pretty much, yeah. And you've been, I think a couple times you guys, and you've worked with me on a couple of proposals and stuff. You know how
intense.
It's very intense. It's very time consuming.
Let me ask you about when you started your business before you went into 8A. 8A is a SBA program designed for minority businesses to get contracts that are set aside for minority and small business.
Yeah, it's basically, it's supposed to be a program that gives you a kickstart. It's a business development program. Where people think it's really not just for minorities. It's what they call it is if you can prove social disability. Because now I think there's a lot of women-owned businesses that are 8A.
Yeah. And
at the time, remember, you ever work with Parker Excavation?
Yes, yeah.
He wasn't minority. He just happened to have showed social disability because I think he had some kind of connection with the Cherokee Indian tribe from.
A social disadvantage, yeah.
So social disadvantage, but what it does, basically the 8A gives you, they'll restrict contracts to where they compete them only among 8A companies. So you're not taking on $100 million firms in a competition because it's hard to compete. You've seen the detail that goes into a government proposal. I mean, it's time consuming. Just to give you an example, on our Adamir Wismer contract at White Sands, it's a $110 million 5-year contract. When we won it back in, it was March of 2008. It took us 2 years from the time the government started, the release of sources sought, solicitation, they started marketing the contract for the recompete. We hired a PM strategically we thought could help us win. 2.5 years writing that proposal, preparing. So we spent about $250,000 putting that proposal together. And then they had full-blown orals on that one. It just wasn't a written proposal. You actually, your technical presentation was a 2-hour oral briefing where you have a source selection group evaluating and videotaping your presentation, and then you submit your past performance and your cost in a separate volume. And that was a shootout, but we ended up winning it. Yeah. And it's been a great contract. I think today we've done now close to $134 million on that because the government keeps extending it.
Wow. Adamir, now Wismer is White Sands Missile Range. Wismer.
White Sands Missile Range.
And ADA is another company.
It's ATA out of Albuquerque. Very successful small business. They specialize in developing sensor measurement equipment. They've got a beautiful facility outside the Eubanks Gate there at Kirtland.
Yeah. That's Mr. Tenorio, right?
Tony Tenorio is the president. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then Miratek. So Adamir is what you call.
Adamir is ATA Miratek, and then Wismer. It's a joint venture that was developed strictly to support the test engineering analysis contract for the material test director at White Sands Missile Range.
What does that mean?
Basically, the material test director, what we do is we support the test engineering analysis for all the missile systems, that are tested out of White Sands, Chuzam, Patriot, over the years. And what we did a lot you familiar with the network integration evaluation?
It used to be.
That was going on strong. Well, it's still going strong now. We were the main search contractor to provide a lot of the data collectors. So at one time on that contract alone, I think 1 year for NIE 13.2, we hired about 197 data collectors and data managers and different background sets to support the effort. It was very tough doing that, to search, because it was a search type of positions where we only hired them for 4 months to 6 months, and they have to have clearances. So in this business, to get a person with a secret clearance or an interim secret, it's very time consuming.
Wow. So you become a real expert in government contracting. The 8A program, it has a lifespan. It has a 9-year lifespan.
9-year lifespan, yes.
And so you didn't get your first contract under 8A for 3 years.
3 years. Lessons learned. Going back, probably it's best to have waited a couple of years. But hindsight's 20/20.
Well, once you started getting 8A contracts, were they okay? Were they good for you?
They were very good. Yeah, that's basically, I think the 8A, what you can do also in 8A, it's a big advantage. If you're working with a customer like we did at Fort Bliss for DHS CBP, for the Department of Energy up in Washington. That work we do, it's a nuclear non-proliferation contract in Washington, D.C. If you convince a customer, you start maybe with a $50,000 contract, and they see that you perform well, you do great work, you bring great people to support the customer, you're cost competitive. With the 8A program, you can approach the customer. It's very time consuming and very costly for them to put out a competitive proposal. So they can do a sole source award up to $4 million. At one time, back when we were 8A, it was $3 million. Then it went up to 3.5, now it's 4. So we use that was a very strategic mechanism that we used to get several $4 million contracts.
So you graduated from the 8A.
Yes, in May of 2004.
But you learned government contracting.
We learned government contracting.
And you learned another vehicle which you talk about, which is joint venturing and partnering.
In this business is really all about partnering. Another big area for us for growth has been the strategic partnerships we formed with companies like Raytheon, big government contractors, Booz Allen, Lockheed. I can go through the whole list. Trax International. They've been great. We do a lot of subcontract work for these large. These are, Lockheed, billion-dollar firms. But
you've allowed yourself to be mentored by them and learn from them.
Well, the one big lesson we had in 2002, it's funny, we were doing, you're familiar with Silicon Graphics?
Yes.
We're a federal systems integrator for SGI. SGI basically develops high-performance computing.
Right.
And I don't want to get too technical, but the Unix market has kind of disappeared now with Gates. Now everything's Linux and Windows. But we still continue to sell SGI to L3 in Dallas.
Really?
But it's more of a niche market.
Yeah.
Even though they're expanding now more into SAP environments, ERP environments. Right. We were talking to Raytheon about them buying an Origin 2000 server. And in the meeting, the SGI guy and it just wasn't flowing. So the small business liaison that was in the meeting kind of sided with us. We created a relationship right there, and over the years, she recommended we do a mentor-protege between Miratek and Raytheon. There was a lot of synergy. Miratek was like a mini Raytheon, doing a lot of the same type of business. DoD had a program called a mentor-protege where a large firm like Raytheon would provide technology transfer to a small emerging business like Miratek. And the value add is intangible. Like for us, it helped us go through ISO 9000 certification. We got some of our technical guys getting CISSP certification. They helped us put a 10-year strategic plan. And the way the program worked, Raytheon would get funded up to $300,000 into one of their contracts a year. And then they would use that technology transfer to come train us here, or we'd go up to Garland and Dallas. And we learned a lot. With a mentor-protege, it didn't really create a lot of more revenues. It's just the learning process made us just a stronger firm.
Yeah, it's a business management technology transfer.
Transfer.
And then you took that and you mentored. You became a mentor.
Well, when we won our first, Big Crow was a big contract we got up at Kirtland Air Force Base through the 8A program. Again, it was using the strategic partnership where the customer thought he could mitigate his risk by going with Miratek. That ended up being a great contract, great program. It's not around anymore. But basically what we had is two NKC 135s, 60-year-old 707s that we integrated with radar and communications gear. We flew 19 missions supporting Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom. Basically, it was a flying test bed, similar to our Admiral Wismer contract, but you're doing it with these aircraft. We also had some ground station equipment. That program opened up the classified world to Miratek.
Okay.
And even though there's not much we can say about that, we started operating in that market.
Yeah, I remember a little bit about that Big Crow, and I'd ask you questions, and you couldn't talk too much about it.
No. Yeah, but that opened up a lot of doors, and with Air Force and other, up at Security Hill.
But then you became a protege to a smaller company.
That's what we're doing now. As a company, we've used. Now we're kind of reversing even though the DoD mentor protege that we had with Raytheon is different. That's a funded program. So you have DCMA actually coming in and doing audits and everything. The SBA mentor protege is a little bit different. It's also a technology transfer program, but it allows you to create joint ventures between, I think it's an emerging 8A. They've got to be in the developmental stage of their business and an established small business or an established large business. And the advantage there is you pull the resources of both firms to compete for competitive efforts. And you know, it just creates a much stronger team, and they waive the size standard for the larger business. So it's very strategic.
So you've been mentored, but you also mentor now.
Yeah, we're starting our third mentorship now, our third company, a company out of Albuquerque that we're going to be mentoring.
And the businesses that you mentor grow.
Yes, I mean, we've been lucky that they've all grown. Yeah, actually, our last mentor, I mentioned Miratek was one of our mentors. They've left us behind in sales, but that's the goal.
And Miratek happens to be your sister.
My sister's company, yeah.
And she's grown the company.
She's grown and they're in another line of business. They're mainly, their big growth has been in the facilities management, not vertical or horizontal construction, but you know, a lot of construction type activity. But we've also, we help build their professional services side of the business, a lot of environmental work, mentioned recycling, hazardous waste.
Well, that's what you understand from your engineering. Now, as you get into managing this business, you don't do engineering anymore, do you?
No, you know, we have a contract down at Arnold Engineering Development Center where we support the hypersonic program for the Pentagon, the Test Resource Management Center up in D.C. Are you familiar with hypersonic technology?
Very.
Well, I probably won't get into too much detail, but it's basically very high-speed systems. The engineers we have at AEDC, great team. Our program manager, Wade Burfitt, is sharpest guy I've met. Not only from the technical side, from his presentation skills and his management skills, he's solid. He's helped us. That's another model I've used to grow the company. You hire an individual like that has a footprint and knows that customer, is intimate with a customer, technically very dynamic, and you know, you take care of him and he helps you grow the business. Wade has helped us grow to 8 FTEs out there now, and then we just picked up another contract, the test support technology. And some of the guys we hired in this contract are some of the top aerodynamic engineers in the nation.
Wow.
A couple of them are like 70 years old, semi-retired, but they've continued working. And AEDC, they have the wind tunnels, anechoic chambers where they do testing for F-18, F-16. Very, very unique facility. So what they've got in their brain is something that can't be replaced. So Wade has helped us grow that part of the business. Anyway, when I go over there, they'll make fun of me that they're real engineers.
Okay.
They're doing what I learned, you know.
Yeah. But you're traveling a lot. You travel to all these sites.
I travel quite a bit, yes. Well, you know, our contract's down at Eglin, down in Tullahoma, Tennessee, in Washington, D.C., where we do the nuclear nonproliferation contract. Tulsa with the Corps of Engineers. We have a contract with Tulsa, providing environmental support. Dallas, I mentioned all the stuff we do with L3, Raytheon, Bell Helicopter. California, with I've mentioned California Edison, Southern California Edison. So it's pretty spread out. Our growth has been. We continue having a strong presence here. Our biggest contract at White Sands, at Fort Bliss, but our growth has come outside as well.
So what's the future of Miratek?
The future, I continue. I mean, this year we've got a new protege. I think it's two things. We want to maintain a lot of our existing contracts, and then we're expanding into different markets. Now I mentioned with hypersonics. The commercial area is an area we're really focusing on, the utility business and energy business. We do hold the environmental contract for with El Paso Electric. We do all the operations and maintenance for the Rio Grande plant, the copper plant. And that's an area that, from the GIS side, technology, and also from the environmental, we're really marketing heavy. So I see the company maybe transforming from a 70% federal to more, we go 50-50 commercial, federal. Oil and gas is an area we've been looking at with the high-performance computing. But every time you go into a different vertical market, it takes time. It just doesn't happen overnight. I mean, it just takes a lot of investment, a lot of work to go there.
So what are the biggest skills you've seen that you've needed that have been the most help to you because it's a very complex business you're in.
Yeah, our company is so diverse. Yeah, it's. I think the number one is the work ethic, and just I guess that's something in your DNA. You know, I called you get the Al Pacino eyes from a lot of late night, a lot of late night proposal writing, and then surrounding yourselves with good, strong people. Like I mentioned, our PMs. I haven't hired a lot of business development. Everybody is always kind of, well, how many sales guys do you have in your company? I really haven't used that model. Instead, in our business, it's all about keeping your overhead and G&A competitive. So we've hired guys like Wake Burford and Doug Ferrata. These are high-level, usually retired military. Like Doug used to fly cargo planes in Vietnam, but he's a programmer. He's like 68, 70 years old, and he's a programmer. But he was our PM at Sandia National Labs. Yeah. Through his contacts, he's a billable employee, but he helped me grow business. Wade helped me grow business at ADC. In Washington, D.C., with a strong manager with Yen Boone. So that's the model, is getting good program managers, good technical people. Because in our business, it's all about performance. If you don't perform, they're not going to renew the contracts.
How do you measure performance? How do you hold performance there as an accountability factor?
Well, the government gives you the metrics on what. On our Admiral-Wismer contract, you don't see too many contracts like that anymore, but it's a cost-plus fixed fee, award fee contract. Fixed fee is we negotiated a percentage when we won the contract, where it'd be 2% or whatever, that you make profit. But award fee is based on certain metrics that the White Sands Missile Range looks at. They look at quality, technical objectives, on time, cost control, innovations. They have their and I haven't seen exactly. They do that behind closed doors, but then they come give us a grade. And with that grade, they multiply. If you get a 70% of your fixed fee or 80%, and we've averaged our last CPARs, the Contractor Performance Assessment Report, has been exceptional. We probably averaged between 95 to 98. And again, I don't know the numbers for sure, but it's in that range.
And you,
so you there when you ask the metric question, that's how they gauge it there.
Okay, so you get a report card.
You get a report card.
Yeah. So with all this you operate with a lean shop.
Very lean. Yeah, I've always operated. I say keep your general administrative costs low, and especially now that the government is doing a lot of what's called LPTA, lowest cost technically acceptable. You've got to keep your costs competitive. Yeah.
So you're president and CEO, and you're the chief marketer.
Yeah, that's and a lot of it is relationships that you form. And when you're a small business, and when I mentor new 8As, I tell them that the customers, when they see the president there, especially in a small business award, it makes a big difference.
Sure does.
It really shows that you have a passion for that customer. I mean, it's great. Now, everybody uses a different growth model. If you read most business and MBA books, the model it's surrounding yourself with a bunch of salespeople,
So really, your core competency, though, is to be able to understand the dynamics of winning contracts and performing on contracts and growing contracts.
Exactly. Yeah, you identify the markets. Understanding the customer. What is it what keeps up the customer? What is it that keeps them up at night? What are his concerns? What are the differentiators? When you write a proposal, what's going to make you different than a team that's got Lockheed or Northrop Grumman on their team? You've got to identify that, and you basically, it's a story. On the professional services, construction is a little bit different. You write bids, right, and estimates, right? And the professional services on these big contracts, you're actually writing a story. You're starting a business. When you're going after that proposal, you're telling them how you're going to run their contract and their operations and continue making them a successful organization.
So when you write these proposals, and you go into some of these, it takes you months, right? And lots of money, and you get...
On the big ones, yeah. There's smaller ones too, but yeah, they take...
And you oversee all of that.
Yeah, I'm the capture manager for the company. And that's one thing Raytheon helped us a lot in they have a gate process, a review. The big companies, they go through a review process where they might spend 8 months looking at an opportunity, and after 8 months, they might decide not to go. It's better to walk away sometimes than to pursue a contract you don't have a chance at winning.
So what challenges have you faced that have been the most difficult?
Like any company in the early days was working capital. I didn't take a salary for 3 years.
Ah.
You know, the first 3 years, luckily when I left the Collider, you know, they gave us a great severance package. I think that was a big thing in me starting the company. They gave us like a 3-year, because we displaced a lot of individuals from Livermore and different Department of Energy sites around the world. I just stayed there in Arlington. So I had like a 3-year severance for medical and medical benefits. But I invested all my severance and other savings into keeping the company, getting the company going. So those first 3 years were tough. But they were fun years too, because that's,
the growth
I
stage.
was very young, and then you had the dream of.
But you followed that model in terms of investing in your business?
I pretty much invested all back into the business. That's the model I've always followed. And my model has always been very conservative, kind of an engineer approach to running a business. Now we maintain a very strong working capital, and we pretty much invest everything back into the business.
And you keep your salary low and all kinds of things low?
Yeah, I mean, I've always compensated myself based on we have a set salary, but then based on the performance of the company for that year. And what we've done is we've shared back with the employees as well. That's what we've been able to keep. Like at Fort Bliss, at one time we had 60 people out there supporting the Department of Public Works Environmental Division. Great employees, great customer. But the way we kept them happy was the way we compensated them. So every year, I think one year we distributed $400,000 profit. So back to the employees. And I call that discretionary profit distribution. We didn't have to, but we gave it back to the employees. And I think it pays back, and the PMs and others, they perform well, and you get good award fees and you keep winning. And that's kind of the model.
So what kind of awards have you won?
Well, over the year, you know, we won the Nunn Perry Award with Raytheon as the top mentor-protege partnership in the nation. We've had quite a lot of SBA, Award of Excellence, the Regional Prime Contractor of the Year, Technology Partner of the Year here, the local small business. So it's been quite a few awards over the years.
So this whole ride for building a business has been very satisfying for you?
It has, yeah. For an engineer, that, you know, I could have been, you know, my mindset was more focused on being an engineer. But go back to high school, the counselor thought I was more an engineer, being a corner, designing an airplane wing, because I was very shy at a young age. I still kind of am, but
yeah.
it's
So
different with an engineer.
what advice do you give people starting to get into business?
I think the key is to know the business, and then you have to have a passion for the business and the drive, know what you're getting into. I actually tell a lot of people, don't start a business.
Why?
If you're not ready, if you're not taking it serious, it can be a tough road. You know, it's different than working for somebody. But it also can be very fruitful. You know, if you really work hard and you manage it, it can be a great experience.
Well, you've been one of the few guys that has really profited well from the 8A program, in the sense that you learned well to grow the business after 8A and to take it to bigger heights.
Yes. Basically, yeah, I think it's, and again, I think it was the relationships over the years, the partnerships that we built. And still, I mean, it's not, those guarantee, you still got to keep that driving competitive spirit at all times.
So how do you keep focus?
The focus, I think it's the passion for the business and the employees. I think you do it for the employees also. We've always, just to give you an example, at Fort Bliss, if you go out between Bliss, Homeland Security, Epic, and all the organizations out here, we counted at one time we had 37 ex-Miratek employees that are now government.
Okay.
So our individuals were high performers to the point where our biggest competitor was our customer sometimes. That's just happening in the Department of Energy over the last week. A customer approached us that there's 2 of our young guys that we've invested in. They've been great performers, and they're short on country managers. Country managers are, you know, we support 75 sites around the world where we deploy these rapid response sensors. So they're going to hire away 2 of our individuals.
Wow.
But they let us backfill the slots. And it continues a strategic partnership with a customer.
Okay. Wow.
So
that's a neat relationship.
even your customers sometimes are your competition.
Yeah.
But if you work it right, it can be a good thing. So the question you asked me, yeah, it's really for the employees. I think I've kept it going. and it's kind of fun doing different things. 'Cause, you know, I'm never stuck doing one little project every day. We're in so many diverse areas.
Like you've got a conference going on this week?
Yeah, there's White Sand sponsors a conference. It's called it's ITEA, the International Test and Evaluation Association. It's a System of Systems workshop at the Wyndham. So all the WISMER, all the test and engineering analysis type guys, from test and evaluation guys from around the country come down. It's a small conference, but it's very good.
Well,
Yeah.
Joe, it's really been a fascinating ride listening to your story. There's a lot more there, but you run fast and furious.
Yeah, you got to keep those. You got to be moving fast at all times.
Well, I really appreciate your story, and I trust that our viewers have really enjoyed this tour through government contracting and high tech work. It's been a fascinating story. Joe Diaz, president of Miratek, thank you for joining us, and thank you for hearing this story and joining us. Have a good day.
Thank you.